Hi there. So this talk's a lot closer to home. As I was introduced, I'm studying, actually an active researcher out here on the playa, and I'm looking for exportable urban planning lessons that we can help strengthen communities outside our gates. So in taking a look at BlackRockCity in the past 4 years, it's really more a story. It's more than a story about the world's largest intentional community. We're more than a story of one man. It's not just about the effigy. What I've learned is it's really the exportable and the workable framework of Rod Garrett, architect and planner. It's a truly testament to him that we have an opportunity to experiment in utopian community while we're here, 1 week per year. Thank you. The plan itself works primarily because at BlackRockCity, everything is reversed, it's mocked, it's reconceptualized, or it's innovated. So a design plan that serves as a framework which allows us to have the freedom to build our imagined landscapes, then share them up with our fellow citizens, and also orient them in such a way, whether we intentionally have or not, to encourage social interaction with one another. And by doing that, we've created a very safe community. In looking at our city, it might appear more similar to the autonomous communities, township or a favela, than a utopian model, which you'd find in a textbook, because we are limited to bring the materials we have available to us. So we have to bring everything in. So what might start as a small or scattered accumulation of camps, individual dwellings, over year after year, by returning to the desert, we naturally form larger networks and our camps grow. This offers an opportunity for specialization. And in that specialization, that's how we start forming communal bonds. Those communal bonds will be turned into theme camps, and even at the macro scale, that'll become our villages. So outside the community, a lot of people who are unfamiliar with Burning Man, they'll go ahead and ask, why is it worth the effort, and why is it worth the expense? Certainly, if you were to take a superficial view, particularly out in the outer regions of the city, you'll see that it looks more of a landscape of dusty tarps, a bunch of tents, and parked cars. So particularly to some, that's not appealing. However, the journey out here means enough for over 50,000 participants per year to come from all over the world, take an arduous journey, wait through hours of lines. Once they reach the gates, you know, this is a gated city, but not one we typically think of when we think of a privileged or classed master plan community. No, our city, once we reach the gates, we welcome you home. We give you a warm hug, and we greet you with true sincerity. And in doing that, it starts the sense of community right from the second you step foot across those boundaries. Yeah, thanks. Thanks. Thank you. So it can be a vulnerable experience when you get here, just the way it can be a vulnerable experience standing up here and talking to my people. Thanks. But when you arrive here, you're completely exposed. You're entirely in the public realm. And for those of you who are arriving for the first time, this is an uncomfortable experience that you don't typically create or experience outside the gates. And in doing that, you have to observe your neighbors, you have to interact with your neighbors, and figure out how to create and design a workable shelter, which is going to stand up to harsh winds, corrosive dust, endless solar exposure, extreme temperatures. And by doing that interaction and having lived it and having survived it, you leave here with a stronger sense of community than that of just an event with ephemeral boundaries. Thank you. So for me, community starts at our camps. The city plan, obviously, is a city of monumentation or a city of art, but I'm really focused in what's happening at our local level. Looking at the site, we're all familiar with the center and highest most point, the effigy itself. We have the Temple of Juno this year facing out onto the plaza, just the way you'd see many cathedrals facing onto a plaza in other cities. We have a derivative of an American Main Street. That would be our Esplanade. And then we have our real community center, which is Rods Road and 6 o'clock being center camp, which brings us together for demonstration, market exchange, and events all throughout the event. Taking a look at the man himself, I had the privilege to walk around last year with a prominent architect, and he really opened my eyes to the thought of scale. The scale out here really resets us. It's an opportunity in our overexposed lives to take a look and say, wow, that's really cool. And then go ahead and ask, why did somebody build that? What does it mean? And what does it offer up to us? This is not experienced typically with the structure outside of BlackRockCity. It also, the monuments surrounding the plaza for us, it serves as community because all of us go back to our camps and back to our friends, and we report and engage in discourses with each other about what we saw and what we think others should go see. But for me, from a planning perspective, I take a look at the man as a representation of, he looks down upon us Monday through Friday, then we burn him on Saturday. And it's not just the surge that rushes through us as a community, it's the rejection of the City Beautiful movement, which was at the turn of the century a deterministic figure that monuments would create social order. So by burning him, we're saying, hell no. Taking a little bit more modernist view, and not high modernism and the problematic issues that came with it, but taking a look at the Garden City, whether Rod Garrett intended to or not, by using a similar framework here at BlackRockCity, we have a scalable model. He was a visionary and invented the idea of an intentional mix of urban life and rural character. And he put 32,000 up to 50,000 on 1,000 open space acres out in the country. So he was, like BlackRockCity, not too concerned with what the buildings would look like. None of us have a handbook when we arrive, as we need to build it like this. He was concerned about the mix of uses to encourage social interaction. And that's the exact same philosophy that's applied here. So looking at the landscape layout, it shares more than just a layout of physical grand boulevards. It's actually the ideology behind it. The ideology behind it being that we would self-organize, we would self-govern, and we would be sustainable. And with that, we would engage in communal efforts, very similar to the principles we practice here each day. And it attracted a lot of eccentrics. Which, thank you. And the center of the Garden City was the community center, and much akin to our center camp that we experienced. It was a place we would come together and learn from one another. We'd engage in demonstrations, and we would do some small local market exchange. Now, there's been some questions that have come up over the years about what's going on at the periphery. There are examples, not common, of odds, a focus on private spaces, corners which aren't active, streets that aren't vibrant. And it's this idea that ultimately the Garden City succumbed to, which was that it would become a suburb and the problems associated with suburbanization. But this post-World War II facade or ideal with the focus on private space, we see that, or at least from my documentation, burners as a whole really reject that. We satirize it, we mock it, and we contextualize it out here. And in doing that, we actually prefer, from what I've found, a resurgence in neo-traditionalism, new urbanism, and that really reaffirms that community starts in the front. And so think about the way you orient your space here, whether you intended to or not, and see if it mimics that same criteria. The use of decorative signage, cool lighting, clever words, walk-up paths, awnings, vestibules. You're inviting interaction whether you're uttering words or not. And by sharing an inclusive interest in one another, whether you be a neighbor or a passerby or a fellow resident of your camp, you're inviting that communication to take place. And once you start asking me about the cool ornaments or innovations at my camp, I won't talking to you about the pride of ownership that I take here. And that's something that we don't see a lot outside, particularly in the Western United States. Our communities have taken a misstep. So with that, I was actually struck. I was really struck, and I went out and I was speaking around the 9 o'clock neighborhood, and one participant told me, now why would I need to venture out of my neighborhood? There's nothing more interesting to see in the city. Now how could that be? I was thinking, what an outlier, who would think like this? There's tons to see. Every single site here is unique. It's based on what you could bring. Not to mention, it's either being created, constructed, it's at its fruition, or you're disassembling it, or you're burning it. So what I found was, on deeper analysis of that statement, there's something going on here, and that being that we're transcending the need to create a place to go, which planners always do. We want to create a place for you to go where you can particularly come on your bike or on your feet, that's always good, and interact with one another in a safe place with architectural interests where you'll linger. But we're doing that, we're redefining this norm, we're doing that from our hearth. And so that is the lesson to take away here. Think about defining your space and inviting community from the hearth as opposed to creating a place to go to. And that will strengthen the community. So in its short but significant existence, BlackRockCity teaches us a deeper understanding of an intentional community, but also lessons to learn and take for a growing city. So thank you very much.